Have you ever imagined what it would be like to escape the destiny that we all consider inevitable? Death, this universal phenomenon, is something that levels the rich and the poor, the powerful and the humble. However, within the pages of the Holy Scriptures, there are astonishing accounts of people who transcended that common reality. These figures did not experience death, but were taken directly into the presence of God. Enoch, Elijah, and the enigmatic figure of Melchizedek are extraordinary examples that challenge our understanding of human destiny. Get ready to explore stories that may change your perspective on life and what lies beyond. The Bible is full of narratives that inspire, teach, and intrigue us. Among them, the accounts of Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek stand out for their uniqueness. They not only lived differently, but their final destinies were marked by an unprecedented divine intervention. In this video, we will unveil the secrets behind these stories and discover what their experiences can teach us about faith, obedience, and God's eternal plan. Enoch, the man who walked with God. Enoch's journey is a powerful example of how faith and closeness with God can transform lives. Coming from an era marked by corruption and widespread sin, Enoch, as described in Genesis 5:24, lived so righteously and faithfully that God decided to spare him from death. He simply was not found because God took him away. That brief phrase carries a profound meaning, pointing to a relationship so intimate with the Creator that it surpassed the barriers of the physical and the natural. Enoch lived in a time when humanity was quickly turning away from God. Violence, selfishness, and immorality dominated society. Even in that grim context, he chose a different path. He walked with God, which means he lived in constant communion, seeking his guidance and aligning his actions with divine principles. This walking with God symbolizes a life of obedience and devotion that radically contrasts with the behavior of his contemporaries. But what makes Enoch even more fascinating is the fact that he not only lived righteously, but was also uniquely rewarded for it. His story is a testimony that true faith transcends the limitations of earthly existence. In Hebrews 11:5, we are reminded that by faith Enoch was taken, so that he did not experience death. He was not found, because God had taken him away. This passage emphasizes that it was his unwavering faith that pleased God. Furthermore, apocryphal texts, such as the Book of Enoch, offer an even more detailed glimpse into his life. Although not canonical, these writings reveal heavenly visions that Enoch is said to have received, showing secrets of the cosmos and the divine plans for humanity. These accounts, although controversial, further emphasize Enoch's role as an intermediary between God and man, a figure of righteousness in a corrupted world. Elijah, the prophet of fire and courage. While Enoch represents a peaceful and faithful walk with God, Elijah embodies the courage and determination to defend the faith even in the most adverse circumstances. Elijah's story begins abruptly in 1 Kings 17, where he emerges as a prophetic figure in a time when Israel was steeped in idolatry and the worship of Baal. During the reign of King Ahab and his wife Jezebel, the nation strayed from God, worshipping false gods and ignoring the divine commandments. Elijah not only challenged this state of affairs, but also played a central role in some of the most dramatic moments in biblical history. One of the most striking events was his confrontation with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, as narrated in 1 Kings 18. In that episode, Elijah proposed a challenge. The God who answered with fire would be the true God. While the prophets of Baal cried out in vain, Elijah prayed, and the Lord sent fire from heaven, consuming the sacrifice, the wood, and even the water around the altar. This event not only demonstrated God's supremacy, but also reaffirmed Elijah's prophetic authority. However, his ministry was not just about miracles and confrontations. Elijah also had moments of deep vulnerability. After his victory on Mount Carmel, he fled to the wilderness, fearing for his life in light of Jezebel's threats. In his despair, he sought refuge on Mount Horeb, where he experienced a unique divine manifestation. God did not appear to him in a strong wind, earthquake, or fire, but in a gentle whisper, showing that his presence can be found both in the extraordinary and in the subtle. Elijah's ascension to heaven, narrated in 2 Kings 2, is one of the most impressive events in the scriptures. Knowing that his time was near, Elijah crossed the Jordan River, accompanied by his disciple Elisha. There he was taken up into heaven in a chariot of fire, a powerful symbol of divine approval and the continuity of his ministry through Elisha. While Enoch and Elijah inspire us with their miraculous ascensions, Melchizedek intrigues us with his unique presence in the scriptures. Little is known about him, but his brief appearance in Genesis 14:18-20 left a profound mark on biblical history and theological understanding. Melchizedek, the eternal priesthood and divine mediation. Melchizedek is presented as the king of Salem and priest of the Most High God. He meets Abraham after the latter had defeated the kings who had captured his nephew Lot. In that encounter, Melchizedek blesses Abraham and offers him bread and wine, a gesture loaded with spiritual and priestly symbolism. In response, Abraham gives Melchizedek a tenth of everything he had, acknowledging his spiritual authority. What makes Melchizedek so enigmatic is the absence of details about his lineage, birth, or death. He seems to appear out of nowhere without a genealogy and disappears as suddenly as he arrived. In Hebrews 7:3, he's described as without father or mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like the Son of God, he remains a priest perpetually. This description has led many to interpret him as a symbolic figure, or even as a prefiguration of Christ before his incarnation. Moreover, Melchizedek represents a priestly order that precedes and transcends the Levitical priesthood, based not on descent, but on a direct relationship with God. He is mentioned again in Psalm 110:4, which declares, "You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek." This verse is widely understood as a messianic prophecy, pointing to the role of Jesus Christ as the eternal high priest. The connection between Melchizedek and Christ is particularly significant. Just as Melchizedek, Jesus does not belong to the Levitical priestly lineage, but exercises a superior and eternal priesthood. He is the perfect mediator between God and humanity, not limited by time or lineage. Therefore, Melchizedek serves as a symbolic precursor to Christ, pointing to the eternal and redemptive nature of the divine plan. Eternal lessons from the stories of Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek. The stories of these three figures are not merely fascinating narratives. They bring profound lessons that help us understand God's eternal plan and our role within it. Enoch, the importance of a constant walk with God. Enoch teaches us that an intimate and continuous relationship with God is possible, even amidst corruption and sin. His life challenges us to seek God daily, aligning our thoughts and actions with His will. Moreover, his ascension to heaven reminds us that eternal rewards await those who remain faithful. No matter how challenging our surrounding environment may be, faith and obedience can lead us to experience the supernatural. Elijah, courage and faith in times of adversity. Elijah's story challenges us to be bold in our faith, even when facing opposition. He was a prophet unafraid to confront false gods and proclaim the truth, even in the face of death threats. His life is a reminder that God acts powerfully in our lives, both in the extraordinary and the everyday. Elijah's experience on Mount Horeb teaches us that God can be present in moments of calm and quiet, just as much as in grand displays of power. Melchizedek, the eternal priesthood and divine mediation. Melchizedek invites us to reflect on the role of Jesus as our eternal high priest. He reminds us that our connection with God does not depend on rituals or specific lineages, but on a direct relationship with Him through Christ. His story also emphasizes the importance of recognizing spiritual authority and honoring those whom God places in our lives as leaders and mediators. A common connection, eternity in the divine plan. Although the stories of Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek are distinct, they share a central theme: divine intervention that transcends time and space. These figures remind us that God's plan for humanity is eternal, extending beyond earthly limitations. Enoch was taken up to heaven as a symbol of perfect communion with God. Elijah ascended in a chariot of fire, demonstrating divine approval and the promise of redemption for those who remain faithful. Melchizedek, with his lack of genealogy and priestly role, points to the eternal priesthood of Christ and his ceaseless mediation on our behalf. These stories also encourage us to live with an eternal perspective. They remind us that our earthly existence is only a part of a much larger plan. Just as Enoch walked with God, Elijah proclaimed his truth, and Melchizedek represented his priesthood. We are called to play our part in that plan, trusting his guidance and living in a way that pleases him. The stories of Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek are not mere ancient accounts, but invitations for us to reflect on our spiritual journey and our relationship with God. Each of these characters teaches us something profound and transformative that we can apply in our lives today. Walking with God like Enoch, Enoch lived in a society dominated by sin, yet his life demonstrates that it is possible to stand out as a beacon of righteousness amidst darkness. This leads us to ask, how is our relationship with God? Do we set aside daily time to pray, meditate on His Word, and seek His guidance? Like Enoch, we are called to walk with God faithfully, no matter how challenging our environment may be. Furthermore, Enoch's story reminds us that the reward for those who remain faithful to God extends beyond this life. The true victory is being in the presence of God, a promise for all who trust and live according to His will. Having the courage of Elijah in difficult times. Elijah's boldness challenges us to remain steadfast in our faith, even when facing opposition. He was a prophet who did not fear to confront false gods and corrupt leaders, relying entirely on God's power and protection. Ask yourself, are you standing up for your faith even when it means going against the current? Elijah's life encourages us to be courageous, confident that God is by our side. Additionally, it reminds us that God can work in moments of silence and calm, as well as in dramatic manifestations, recognizing spiritual authority like Melchizedek. Melchizedek invites us to acknowledge and honor spiritual authority, especially that of Jesus Christ, our eternal high priest. His story reminds us that our connection with God does not depend on human rules or lineages, but on a direct relationship with Him through Christ. Consider, are you living according to Jesus' teachings and recognizing His ongoing intercession on your behalf? Just as Melchizedek played a unique role in blessing Abraham, we are called to be instruments of blessing in others' lives, reflecting God's grace and love. Concluding our spiritual journey. The stories of Enoch, Elijah, and Melchizedek point to a God who is deeply involved in our lives, desiring to walk with us, strengthen our courage, and grant us His eternal grace. Each of these characters challenges us to pursue a deeper connection with God, to live with purpose, and to look beyond the here and now. If you felt inspired by these stories, don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Subscribe to our channel for more reflections like this and leave your comment below. Which of these stories touched your heart the most? May God bless your journey of faith, and until the next video,